Luna, a small homegrown cat, had always known the warmth of hearth and home, but the wilderness of Alaska was different, cold, and full of secrets. When a man goes missing, she's forced to face the darkness of a wild world, and an unexpected friendship with a wild bear, Bruce, that will reveal more than she ever imagined. The quiet wilderness of Alaska. The wind howled through the frozen trees of Alaska, carrying with it the chill of the deep, untamed wilds. The sky above was an endless expanse of gray, the clouds hanging low like the weight of secrets yet to be revealed. In the distance, the jagged mountains stood like silent sentinels, their peaks lost in the mist. Below them, nestled on the edge of the wilderness, lay a small village. It was a place of few words and even fewer smiles, where the silence was as oppressive as the snow that fell in soft, steady sheets during the long, dark winters. At the farthest edge of the village, where the roads disappeared into the forest, stood a modest cabin. It was simple, made of wood that had been worn by the years and the harsh climate, but it was warm, homey, and tucked safely away from the wilds that surrounded it. The cabin had a sense of security, of shelter, though Luna, the small gray cat curled by the fire, didn't know it yet. Her world was here, inside these walls, where the cold never reached and the wilderness outside could only be heard in the whispers of the wind. Luna stretched, her slender body arching gracefully, the soft padding of her paws making no sound on the wooden floor. She yawned, the comfort of the fire making her sleepy, but the quiet tug of curiosity pulled at her. There was something about the wilderness outside that both frightened and fascinated her, a world she had never seen, but one that often whispered to her through the open window, when the wind carried a scent she didn't recognize or a sound too distant to understand. Matilda, the elderly woman who cared for Luna, had often told her stories of the wild, her voice soft and distant, as if remembering something lost. She spoke of the forests, the mountains, and the animals, creatures of legend, and creatures of fear. Luna had never paid much attention, for her life inside the cabin had always been safe and predictable. But recently, something had changed. There was a heaviness in the air, an unsettling stillness in the village. The weather had grown colder, the snow more persistent, and Matilda's once lively stories had taken on a darker tone. Luna didn't understand it at first, but she felt the shift deep within her bones. Tonight, Matilda sat by the hearth, knitting something with worn hands. Her gray hair was tied back in a loose bun, her wrinkles deepening as she stared into the flames. Luna had been with Matilda for as long as she could remember, raised by the woman like a daughter. Matilda had no family, and Luna had no one else, so they were as close as family could be. But tonight, something was off. Luna could sense it, even if she didn't fully understand it. "There's something not right in the air tonight, Luna," Matilda murmured, more to herself than to the cat, her eyes flickering to the window where the wind howled outside. "I've been feeling it for days now. It's like the village is holding its breath, waiting for something." Luna looked up at her, her golden eyes wide. She had never seen Matilda so somber. "Is it about Gregor?" Luna thought to herself. The name had been whispered around the village for the past few weeks, but no one ever spoke of it directly. It was a name tied to something darker, something that people didn't want to acknowledge. Gregor was a man who lived on the outskirts of the village, a rugged and independent figure who often ventured into the wilderness, collecting herbs and trading them with the villagers. He was a loner, much like the others who called Alaska their home, but he was known to have a kind heart, a man who did not fear the wilderness. Until recently. Gregor had gone missing 2 weeks ago. No one had heard from him since. His absence had left an unsettling hole in the village. Some said it was just another of the many disappearances that Alaska had become known for, lost hikers, wanderers who never returned. But the people of the village knew better. There were too many secrets buried beneath the snow, too many things that went unexplained. Matilda seemed to sense Luna's silent question. She sighed deeply, her hands pausing in their movements. "People are starting to wonder if Gregor, if something in the wild took him. No one is saying it outright, but you can feel it, can't you, Luna? The air is thick with something we don't want to understand." Luna blinked, her tail flicking nervously behind her. She wasn't sure what Matilda meant by something, but the unease that had been growing in the village for days was starting to make sense. The village, despite its cold beauty, had always been a place of isolation. The people lived alongside the wilderness, but there was always a distance, a wall between them and the wild, as if they understood that the forest was a place of secrets, of things not meant to be known. For the first time in Luna's life, she wondered if the stories Matilda had told were more than just bedtime tales. What if the wild wasn't just a backdrop to her comfortable life? What if it was a force, something alive, something untamable? What if it had a hand in Gregor's disappearance? And what if there was more to the mystery than anyone in the village realized? The shiver of the forest. The next morning, the air felt different, heavier, colder. The wind was relentless, whipping through the trees with a howling fury that seemed to echo through the empty streets of the village. Luna padded softly to the window, her paws light on the floorboards, and stared outside. The snow had begun to fall again, thick flakes swirling in the air, the world beyond the cabin becoming a blur of white. But through the curtain of snow, Luna caught sight of something moving, something large and dark, barely visible against the swirling white of the storm. She blinked and rubbed her eyes. There it was again. A shadow, moving quickly through the trees, too large to be a deer, too quiet to be a human. She felt the hair on the back of her neck prickle, and for the first time in her life, Luna felt fear, not of the cold or the snow, but of the wild. Matilda noticed Luna's concern. "What is it, Luna?" she asked, looking out the window where the cat's gaze was fixed. "Do you see something out there?" Luna didn't respond. She continued to watch the shifting shadow, her golden eyes narrowing. There was something there, a presence in the woods that she couldn't shake. "I'll go check it out," Matilda said, standing up slowly from her chair, a pained look crossing her face. "Stay here, Luna. Don't go out there." But Luna, for reasons she couldn't explain, felt drawn to the door. There was something out there, something that was tied to the mystery of Gregor's disappearance. And no matter how dangerous it seemed, Luna knew she couldn't ignore it. Matilda was already pulling on her coat, but Luna was faster. She darted out the door, her paws sinking into the thick snow, and disappeared into the woods. Luna's paws pressed into the deep snow, her small body moving with surprising speed as she made her way into the woods. The familiar path that led from the cabin had been swallowed by the storm, the snow thick and relentless. It was as though the forest itself was trying to keep her from venturing deeper, the trees groaning under the weight of the snow, their branches bending low as if warning her to turn back. But Luna couldn't stop. Something pulled at her, a force stronger than her instincts, urging her to follow the shadow she had seen just moments before. It was as if the forest itself had whispered her name, urging her to uncover its secrets. Her heart pounded in her chest, the cold air biting at her fur, but her determination burned hotter than the chill. She wasn't sure what she was searching for, answers about Gregor, about the strange feeling that had settled in the village, or about the shadow in the trees. All she knew was that she couldn't ignore it. The forest was alive with sound. The howl of the wind, the rustle of the snow-covered trees, the occasional snap of a distant twig. But amidst these familiar sounds, there was something else, a deeper, more unsettling noise. A low, rumbling growl, distant but unmistakable. It vibrated through the air, sending a shiver down Luna's spine. Her ears pricked, her golden eyes darting around the darkened woods, but she couldn't see where it came from. The growl rumbled again, closer now, and Luna froze in place. A weight pressed into the air, and for the first time in her life, she felt truly afraid. She was a small cat, far removed from the dangers of the wild, and the realization of how vulnerable she was in the vastness of the Alaskan wilderness hit her like a cold wave. But she refused to turn back. The shadow was still out there, and she couldn't leave the mystery unsolved. Another growl, this one louder and closer, like a low thunder. Luna's heart skipped a beat, and just as she was about to turn back to the cabin, she saw it. A massive shape emerged from the tree line, dark and hulking, its body covered in thick, shaggy fur. It was a bear. Luna's breath caught in her throat. The creature was unlike anything she had ever seen, its eyes gleaming with an ancient, knowing look. The bear's immense form loomed over her, its muscles rippling beneath the thick coat of fur, but there was no sign of aggression. Instead, there was something else in its gaze, curiosity, and perhaps, recognition. Luna froze, unsure whether to run or stay. The bear was watching her, his dark eyes sharp and calculating. Despite its terrifying presence, Luna didn't feel the immediate urge to flee. It wasn't the way most wild animals acted toward her. She expected a vicious response, a display of power to intimidate her. But this bear, Bruce, as Luna would later learn, was different. The bear took a few slow steps toward her, and Luna instinctively backed up, her tail flicking nervously. But instead of attacking, Bruce simply crouched down, lowering his massive body to the ground, his eyes never leaving hers. His growl was deep, like a rumble in the earth, but there was no malice in it. Luna's curiosity overcame her fear. There was something about the bear's presence that felt oddly familiar, almost comforting. Perhaps it was his steadiness, his calmness in the face of her fear that made her hesitate. For several moments, neither moved. The air between them was thick with uncertainty, but there was also a strange, almost magnetic pull. Luna sat back on her haunches, studying the bear's face. His fur was matted from the harsh winter, his features rough, but his eyes held something Luna hadn't expected to see in the wild, something akin to understanding. "You're not like the others," Luna thought, her mind racing. "You're not the danger they all say you are." The bear snorted softly, as if to confirm her thoughts. And with that, Luna made her decision. She wasn't going to run. She wasn't going to let fear control her. She needed answers, and perhaps this bear could help her find them. Slowly, Luna took a tentative step forward, her eyes never leaving Bruce's. The bear, instead of reacting with aggression, simply watched her approach. She circled him cautiously, still unsure but intrigued by his quiet nature. There was an unspoken communication between them, a bond forming in the silence of the snowy forest. Finally, Luna stopped in front of him, her tail twitching nervously. Bruce, in turn, lowered his massive head, sniffing at her gently, and Luna felt a strange sense of reassurance flood over her. "You're different," Luna whispered, almost to herself. "Aren't you?" Bruce's low growl rumbled again, and this time, Luna understood it not as a threat, but as a greeting. She took another step forward, and to her surprise, the bear didn't retreat. Instead, he stood and began to walk ahead, looking back at Luna as if to say, "Follow me." With a deep breath, Luna decided to follow. Unlikely companions. The storm intensified as Luna followed Bruce deeper into the forest, her small form trailing behind the massive bear. The wood seemed to swallow them whole, the snowflakes swirling in chaotic patterns, the world beyond the trees hidden in a thick veil of white. Every few moments, the wind would whip through the trees with a harsh cry, but Bruce moved through the storm with confidence, his large paws pressing deep into the snow. Luna, though small and unaccustomed to the harshness of the wild, found herself inexplicably calm in Bruce's presence. There was something about the way the bear moved, so deliberately, so purposefully, that made her feel safe, as if he was guiding her through a world that was foreign to her. For the first time since she had left the cabin, Luna felt a deep sense of connection to the wilderness. The forest, which had always been a place of mystery and fear, now seemed more like a vast, open space full of endless possibilities. The silence between them wasn't uncomfortable, instead, it was a kind of understanding, as if Luna had finally stepped into a world where things were as they should be. After a while, they came upon a clearing, the trees parting to reveal a small, hidden stream that cut through the snow. The water, though partially frozen, ran beneath the ice in soft, gurgling whispers. Bruce stopped at the edge of the stream, his eyes scanning the surroundings. Luna hesitated, watching him carefully. "Why have you brought me here?" she asked, her voice soft but steady. Bruce didn't respond in words, but instead, he turned his gaze to the far side of the stream. Luna followed his eyes, and there, just beyond the bank, she saw something that made her heart race: footprints. Human footprints, leading into the trees on the other side. "Gregor," Luna whispered, her heart skipping a beat. These were the same tracks she had seen earlier, the same footprints that had drawn her into the wild in the first place. Bruce gave a low growl, as if urging her to follow. Luna's curiosity burned brighter now. The mystery of Gregor's disappearance had just become something far more dangerous, and far more personal. The wind howled through the trees, but Luna's heart beat with a steady rhythm as she followed Bruce across the stream. The footprints were fresh, the snow not yet disturbed by the passing of time. Gregor's tracks, small and deliberate, led them into the deeper part of the forest, where the shadows seemed to grow longer, darker. The air was colder here, more suffocating, and the oppressive silence of the wilderness pressed down upon them. Luna hesitated on the other side of the stream, her paws sinking into the soft, wet snow. She looked up at Bruce, who was already moving forward, his massive body weaving through the trees with quiet grace. His eyes were focused, unwavering. There was no fear in his movements, no hesitation, just a quiet certainty that he knew where he was going. For the first time in her life, Luna felt a strange sensation of trust. She had never been one to trust easily. After all, her entire existence had been shaped by the warmth and safety of the cabin, a world where the outside was something to be feared. But in Bruce, she found something different, something that made her want to follow, even into the unknown, even into the heart of the forest where danger and mystery lurked. She took a deep breath, shaking off the lingering unease, and followed Bruce deeper into the woods. The trees were densely packed here, their dark trunks looming like silent guardians of a forgotten world. The snow had piled up around them in thick drifts, and the path was narrow, barely wide enough for the two of them to walk side by side. As they moved forward, the eerie quiet of the forest grew thicker. There were no birds, no small animals rustling in the underbrush. It was as though everything in the woods had fallen silent, holding its breath as they passed. Even the wind seemed to stop, leaving only the soft crunch of snow beneath their paws. Luna couldn't help but feel as though they were being watched, the eyes of the wilderness upon them. She glanced over at Bruce, but the bear seemed unfazed, his every movement calm and measured. He was used to this was his world, not hers. And as she watched him, Luna realized that this wasn't just a random walk through the woods. Bruce was leading her somewhere. Somewhere important. Somewhere she needed to be. After what felt like hours, they came to a clearing. The trees parted to reveal a small, dilapidated cabin, its wooden walls weathered and covered in layers of frost. It looked abandoned, forgotten by time. The cabin was nestled in the heart of the forest, hidden away from the prying eyes of the village. And yet, it was here that the track stopped. Luna's breath caught in her throat as she stepped closer, her eyes scanning the surroundings. The footprints that had led them here were clearly visible in the snow, but they stopped abruptly in front of the cabin. There was no sign of a struggle, no indication of what had happened to Gregor. Bruce stood motionless beside her, his dark eyes focused on the cabin. Luna, despite the growing unease in her chest, felt the pull of something deeper, an urgency that whispered to her, urging her to investigate further. The air was thick with tension as Luna approached the cabin, her paws sinking into the snow with every step. She could smell the faint scent of wood and earth, mixed with something else, something metallic, almost sharp, that sent a shiver down her spine. She paused just outside the door, the weight of the moment pressing down on her. "What is this place?" Luna muttered to herself, but Bruce gave a low, rumbling growl as if to answer her. He moved forward, nudging the door with his large, powerful head. The door creaked open slowly, revealing the dark, musty interior of the cabin. Luna hesitated, her heart racing in her chest. But the bear had already entered, stepping cautiously into the shadows of the cabin. There was no time to turn back now. With a deep breath, Luna followed him inside. The dark discovery. The cabin was cold, its air heavy with dust and decay. The floorboards creaked under Luna's weight as she moved deeper into the room, her eyes straining to see through the dim light that filtered through the cracks in the walls. The space was bare, except for a few pieces of broken furniture and old, forgotten belongings. Luna's gaze fell to the center of the room, where a large wooden table stood. On it was a journal, its pages yellowed with age. She approached it cautiously, her small paws silent on the wooden floor. The scent of old paper filled her nose as she nudged the book open with her nose. The journal was filled with scribbled notes, hastily written, frantic. Gregor's handwriting was familiar to Luna from the few times she had seen him around the village, though now, the words felt foreign and strange. The village is hiding something. I'm not sure who I can trust anymore. The elders, Matilda, someone must know what's going on. The forest is watching us. It doesn't want us here. I've seen it, I've heard it. I don't know how long I have left. Luna's heart pounded as she read the words. She had heard the whispers in the village, the rumors that something wasn't right. But this was different. This was real. Gregor had been onto something, something dark, something that had been hidden away for far too long. Her paws trembled as she flipped through the pages, searching for more answers. The journal detailed strange happenings in the village, disappearances, strange symbols appearing in the snow, people vanishing without a trace. The closer Gregor had gotten to uncovering the truth, the more desperate his words became. And then, at the very end of the journal, a final, chilling note: it's here. The forest is alive. And it has taken me. Luna's breath hitched as she stared at the words, her mind racing. Gregor hadn't disappeared by accident. He had uncovered something, something powerful, and whatever it was, it had taken him. Before she could process the information, she heard a sound behind her, an ominous growl. Luna whipped around, her eyes widening as she saw the shadows moving. Bruce stood between her and the doorway, his body low to the ground, his eyes narrowed, as though sensing something that she could not. The wind outside had stopped, and in its place, there was a quiet, unnerving hum that filled the cabin, like the deep breath of something waiting in the dark. Luna's heart skipped a beat. She wasn't alone. Luna's eyes widened in the dim light of the cabin as the shadows seemed to shift around her, coiling in the corners of the room like a living entity. Her breath caught in her throat, the air suddenly thick with an oppressive weight, as though the very walls were watching, waiting. Bruce stood motionless, his massive frame a silent sentinel, his dark eyes locked on the doorway. The growl that rumbled from his chest was low, resonating with an unspoken warning. Luna felt the fur on the back of her neck stand on end. Whatever was out there in the dark, Bruce knew it was coming. A rustling sound, soft at first, came from the direction of the trees outside. Then, a distant, echoing crackle, like the breaking of branches. Something was moving, something large, and it was closing in. Luna's body tensed, her instincts screaming for her to run. But Bruce remained unfazed, his gaze steady, his focus unwavering. Luna took a cautious step back, her heart racing, her body caught between fear and curiosity. She couldn't understand what was happening, but she could feel the danger closing in. She had ventured into this darkness for answers, but now, the questions felt more dangerous than she ever imagined. Bruce's deep growl grew louder, vibrating through the cabin, and Luna instinctively backed up against the wall, her eyes darting to the door, then to the cabin's only window. She could see nothing through the frost-covered glass, only the swirling, white mist of the storm outside. But she knew something was coming. Suddenly, the door burst open with a violent crash, and Luna gasped as a tall figure emerged from the storm, standing in the doorway. Its silhouette was indistinct, shrouded in the blizzard's fury, but it was unmistakably human, a man, his face obscured by a thick, weathered hood. His movements were slow, deliberate, and as he stepped fully into the room, Luna realized just how dangerous the figure was. The man's clothes were torn, his face haggard and pale. His eyes, when they met Luna's, were wild, wide with a mix of fear and desperation. He spoke in a voice rasped by exhaustion and cold. They know, they're here. Luna froze. The word sent a chill deep into her bones, the intensity of his gaze making her heart skip a beat. The man's presence seemed to have an unsettling effect on Bruce as well. The bear's posture shifted, a low rumble vibrating through his chest. The man slowly lowered his hood, revealing a face that was both familiar and strange, a mixture of someone Luna had seen before, but never like this. His name was Gregor. Luna's heart skipped a beat. She recognized him from the village, though his appearance now seemed to be a ghost of the man she had known. His clothes were torn, his hands marked with cuts and bruises, and there was a faraway, haunted look in his eyes. You've come back. Luna whispered, taking a hesitant step forward. Gregor's eyes flickered to her, his face taut with pain. I never left, he said, his voice trembling. Not really. Bruce growled again, a low and steady sound that filled the cabin. Gregor turned to the bear, his eyes narrowing with a mixture of recognition and caution. The forest has a life of its own, Gregor muttered, his voice raw. It's always watching, always waiting. And it has taken more than just me. Luna's mind raced. She had been so sure that Gregor had disappeared, that the village had simply turned its back on the truth. But now, with Gregor standing before her, ragged, but very much alive, she realized that the truth was far darker than she had imagined. What do you mean? Luna asked, her voice trembling. Gregor stumbled toward the table where Luna had found the journal, his hands shaking as he picked up the worn pages. He let out a sigh, his breath catching in his chest as he leafed through the pages, scanning the hastily written notes. Matilda, she knew, he said quietly, as if the words themselves were painful. They all knew. The village made a pact with the wilderness long ago, something no one talks about. But I found it, and they wanted to keep it hidden. They wanted me to stop searching, to turn away from what was real. Luna felt her stomach twist with unease. Matilda? The kind woman who had cared for her, who had raised her like family. Luna couldn't fathom it. She had trusted Matilda with her life. Gregor continued, his eyes far away. The wilderness isn't just a place. It's something else. Something alive. And it doesn't let go easily. He paused, his gaze meeting Luna's. It's taken people before. And it will take more if we don't stop it. Bruce's growl grew deeper, more insistent. Luna turned to look at him, seeing the muscles in his large frame ripple as he shifted uneasily. It was as though Bruce knew exactly what Gregor was talking about. The wilderness wasn't just a backdrop to their lives, it was a force, a presence that had been quietly controlling them all, shaping the village's history and its future. Why didn't you tell anyone? Luna asked, her voice strained. Why didn't you warn us? Gregor looked at her with dark, tired eyes. I tried. I warned them. But they didn't listen. They never wanted to believe it. They're afraid of the truth, Luna. Afraid of what they've done. And now it's too late. Luna felt the weight of his words settle deep in her chest. The forest, the wild creatures that lurked beyond the village, the strange disappearances, they were all connected. And Gregor had stumbled upon the secret, a truth that had been buried in the dark for years. Gregor's hands shook as he closed the journal. I was supposed to disappear, too. Just like the others. But something in the woods, something I've seen, something I've felt. It won't let me go. It's here, Luna. It's waiting. Luna's eyes narrowed, a realization forming in her mind. You mean, the village is involved in this? They're part of whatever's going on. Gregor didn't answer right away. He simply shook his head. It's not that simple. The village, they're complicit. But it's the forest, the wilderness, that controls it all. And now, they want to silence anyone who gets too close. A sudden noise, like the snapping of a twig, cut through the tense silence in the cabin. Bruce's massive form shifted, his eyes darting to the doorway. The growl in his throat deepened, a warning that something, or someone, was on the move. Without a word, Bruce turned and moved toward the door, his body low to the ground, ready for whatever was coming. Luna's heart raced as she watched him, the urgency in his movements clear. "Bruce? What is it?" But the bear didn't answer. He simply stepped outside, disappearing into the swirling storm, as the cold air rushed in. Luna turned to Gregor, who was now staring at the door with wide eyes. "They know," he muttered, his voice laced with panic. "They've found us." The silent pursuit. The cold wind slammed into Luna's face as she followed Bruce out of the cabin, her paws sinking deep into the fresh blanket of snow. The storm had picked up again, the wind howling louder than ever, drowning out the sounds of the forest. But Luna could feel it, the shift in the air, the tension, as though the very land itself was holding its breath. Whatever had been stalking them in the shadows, whatever had been lying in wait, was now awake. And it wasn't going to let them go easily. Luna's heart raced as she trotted behind Bruce, her small body trying to keep up with his long, powerful strides. Despite the snow, despite the cold, there was an urgency to Bruce's movements that made Luna push herself harder, her mind clouded with questions. What had Gregor meant when he said, "They know"? Who were they, and what were they coming for? The trees around them were thick and dense, their gnarled limbs reaching out like twisted fingers, blocking out most of the light. The forest seemed to be closing in, the shadows growing darker with each passing second. But Bruce didn't falter. His massive form moved effortlessly through the snow, his keen eyes scanning the surroundings as though he were born for this very purpose. Luna kept her gaze on his back, her instincts screaming at her to be cautious, to turn back and hide. But she couldn't. There was too much at stake. She had seen too much now, and the forest held the answers to questions she couldn't ignore. And Gregor had known something that she now needed to understand. The growl in Bruce's throat deepened, his steps slowing as they neared the edge of a darkened clearing. Luna caught up to him, her body stiff with apprehension. The clearing was eerily still, the air thick with an unnatural silence. Even the wind had stopped, as if the forest was waiting for something. Bruce stopped at the edge of the clearing, his body tense, his eyes narrowing as he surveyed the area. Luna stood beside him, her heart pounding in her chest. She could feel it, the weight of the forest, pressing down on them. The sense of being watched, of being hunted, was almost suffocating. Before she could ask what they were waiting for, she heard it. A faint rustling in the trees, followed by the unmistakable sound of footsteps crunching through the snow. Luna's fur bristled, and she instinctively took a step closer to Bruce, her body instinctively seeking the protection of the massive bear. But Bruce remained still, his eyes trained on the movement in the shadows. The footsteps grew louder, and Luna felt her breath catch in her throat. Something was out there, something approaching them with purpose. And then, through the veil of snow and shadows, a figure emerged from the trees. It was a man, a tall, gaunt figure draped in a heavy coat, his face hidden beneath a hood. His movements were slow and deliberate, his steps calculated. But what caught Luna's attention was the way he walked. There was something unnerving about him, something wrong. He didn't move like a normal person, his body was stiff, his movements jerky, as though he were controlled by something else. The figure stopped a few feet away from them, his eyes glinting in the low light. Luna froze, her body tense as she studied him. He didn't speak. He didn't move. He simply stared at them, his gaze cold and unfeeling. Bruce let out a low growl, his muscles rippling beneath his thick fur, but he didn't move. He was waiting. Watching. Luna's mind raced. Who was this man? And why was he here? The man's lips curled into a slight, unsettling smile. "The forest is awake," he said, his voice low and hollow, as if it didn't come from a place of life, but of something far darker. "And it has chosen you." Luna shivered at his words. There was something in his voice, something ancient, something familiar, that sent a chill through her. She didn't understand it, but she felt it deep within her bones. This man wasn't just a stranger. He was part of something much bigger, something that had been lurking in the shadows of the village for as long as she could remember. "What do you want?" Luna finally asked, her voice shaky but defiant. The man's smile widened, but it was devoid of warmth. "What we all want," he said softly. "The truth." Bruce stepped forward then, his massive form blocking Luna from the man. His growl was louder now, vibrating through the air. The man seemed unfazed, his expression unreadable as he watched the bear with something akin to amusement. "The truth has been hidden for too long," the man continued, his eyes narrowing. "The village doesn't understand what it has done. But the forest knows. And it is ready to reclaim what has been taken from it." Luna felt a surge of fear rush through her, her body freezing in place. She didn't understand what the man was talking about, but the way he spoke, the way he moved, made it clear that whatever he was a part of, it wasn't human. Bruce's growl deepened, a warning that made the hairs on the back of Luna's neck stand up. But the man didn't flinch. Instead, he simply raised his hand in a slow, deliberate motion. And then, the forest responded. A rustling sound broke through the silence, coming from all around them. The trees seemed to move, their branches creaking as if reaching toward them. Luna's heart raced as she turned her head, trying to make sense of the sudden shift in the air. The forest was alive, more alive than she had ever felt before. It wasn't just the trees, the snow, or the ground. It was something else, something that watched, that waited, and that was now ready to strike. Luna's stomach twisted with fear. She didn't know what was happening, but she knew one thing: the man, the figure in the hood, had awakened something far darker than they could handle. And they were now standing at the center of it all. The heart of the forest. The forest around them began to change. The wind picked up again, but it wasn't the usual gusts that whistled through the trees. It was something far more sinister, the sound of ancient forces stirring beneath the surface. The ground beneath Luna's paws seemed to pulse with a strange energy, and the trees, once static and silent, now seemed to move, their branches reaching down like twisted fingers, as though alive. Bruce's stance shifted, his massive body low to the ground, muscles taut and ready for anything. His eyes remained locked on the man, his growl growing louder. Luna's heart raced in her chest as she looked between Bruce and the strange figure who stood before them, unmoving. The man, his face still obscured by the hood, raised his hand again, and the air seemed to thicken around them. There was no mistaking it now, the forest was alive with something else. Something that didn't belong in this world. "Do you feel it?" the man asked, his voice soft, almost coaxing. "The forest has awakened, and it will not be silenced again. You can't stop it. No one can. Not even the bear." Luna's eyes darted back to Bruce. He was the only thing standing between her and whatever this man had awakened. But she could see it in his eyes, the bear was unsure, even he was feeling the weight of the forest's presence. "We have to get out of here," Luna whispered urgently, but Bruce didn't move. He was standing his ground, his body stiff with the growing tension. Luna turned to the man, her golden eyes narrowing. "What is this? What do you want from us?" The man smiled, his face cold and distant. "The truth, little cat. You've already started down this path. You can't turn back now. The village has made its deal, and the forest is claiming its due." Luna didn't understand, but one thing was clear: whatever was happening in the wilderness wasn't just a mystery. It was a reckoning. And she, along with Bruce, was right at the heart of it. Luna's breath quickened as the man's words sank into her. The forest around them seemed to breathe in unison with the darkness that enveloped them. The ground beneath her paws felt alive, as though the very earth was pulsing with a deep, ancient rhythm. The trees, once benign and still, now groaned and creaked, their branches swaying in unnatural patterns, as if they were stretching toward the figure standing before them. Bruce's growl deepened, vibrating through the thickening air. His eyes, wide and wary, scanned the surrounding woods, his massive form bracing against the unknown. Luna could feel the weight of the forest pressing down on them, its presence wrapping around them like a heavy fog. The man in front of them remained still, his face still hidden beneath the hood. His voice came again, soft but carrying a weight that made Luna's heart race with fear. "You don't understand, do you? The wilderness does not take kindly to those who disturb its peace. You've uncovered a truth, Luna. A truth that was never meant to be found." Luna shook her head, her thoughts swirling in a desperate attempt to make sense of it all. "What truth? What have you awakened? Who are you?" The man's lips curled into a slow, knowing smile, and the air seemed to thicken around him. "I am a part of this place, as much as the trees, the wind, and the animals. I am a part of the wilderness, one of its keepers, if you will. And now, you have drawn the attention of the forest." The way he spoke, calm, as if this were all inevitable, sent a chill through Luna's bones. She had always known the forest was a dangerous place, but she had never considered that it was more than just a wild expanse. This thing before her was not just a man, not a simple human. He was something older, tied to the very fabric of the land itself. "I don't care what you are." Luna snapped, her voice trembling with a mix of fear and defiance. "I just want to know what happened to Gregor. Why did he disappear? Why are you hiding the truth?" The man's smile widened, his eyes glinting like shards of ice. "Gregor was a fool," he said, his voice dripping with disdain. "He sought to expose what was never meant to be uncovered. The forest's secrets are sacred, and those who try to unravel them are lost. But now that you've come, now that you've walked this path, the forest has chosen you. It has marked you." Luna's breath hitched as a sudden thought struck her. "The forest has chosen you." The words echoed in her mind, and she turned toward Bruce, her gaze filled with silent panic. Was this why he had brought her here? Was this why he had chosen to help her? Was he part of this too? Bruce's low growl was the only answer she received, but his body stiffened as the forest seemed to press in closer, the shadows lengthening around them. Luna felt the earth beneath her shift, as though the ground itself was moving. The trees groaned louder, their branches now twisting and reaching toward the cabin, toward the village, toward whatever lay beyond. "The village," Luna whispered, her voice barely audible. "Matilda. They knew. They knew what was happening all along, didn't they?" The man's smile faded, replaced by something darker. "The village is part of the agreement. They've lived in fear of the forest for generations. They've made their peace with the wild, with the sacrifices it demands. But you, Luna, you've awoken something you weren't meant to." Suddenly, Luna understood. The village, the people who lived there, had been complicit in something ancient. Something that tied them to the land in ways she couldn't yet comprehend. The forest was alive, and its demands were not just of nature, but of the people who lived at its edge. They had made a deal with the wild, and now the price was being paid. The wind shifted again, and Luna felt a cold breeze wash over her, biting at her skin. The forest was not just alive, it was watching. Waiting. It had known they were coming, had known this confrontation would happen. Bruce moved again, stepping forward into the clearing. His massive form seemed to block out the light, casting a shadow that stretched long across the snow-covered ground. The man in front of them did not flinch, did not move, but his smile returned, twisted and full of knowing. "The forest will reclaim what it has lost," the man said, his voice darkening with every word. "And you, Luna, will be its messenger. You will bring the truth back to the village. The forest demands it." Luna's heart pounded, but she stood tall, her fur bristling as she faced the man. "I won't do your bidding," she said, her voice steady despite the overwhelming fear that threatened to swallow her. "I'm not a part of your deal. I won't be a pawn in whatever this is." The man's eyes narrowed. "You don't have a choice. The forest has chosen you, and the truth will come to light. Whether you want it or not. Suddenly, there was a flash of movement from the trees. A large, dark shape appeared, something massive, something terrifying. Luna's heart skipped a beat as the creature emerged from the shadows. It was a beast, unnatural in size, its body covered in black fur, its eyes glowing with an unearthly light. Bruce roared, his massive form charging toward the beast, but it was too fast. With a sudden, violent motion, the creature struck, its claws raking through the air. Bruce leapt to the side, but the creature was relentless, pushing forward with unnatural strength. Luna's pulse raced as she watched the battle unfold in front of her. Bruce was strong, but this beast, this creature of the forest, was unlike anything she had ever seen. The forest was alive with dark energy, and it was not going to let them go without a fight. Luna took a step forward, her eyes focused on the battle, her mind racing. This is it. This is what the forest wants. But I won't let it take Bruce. I won't let it take me. The forest's wrath. The fight between Bruce and the creature escalated in an instant, the collision of their massive bodies shaking the very earth beneath Luna's paws. Bruce roared, a deep, guttural sound that echoed through the trees, as he swiped at the creature with his claws. But the beast, a monstrous entity of shadow and fur, was quick, too quick. It darted around Bruce's strikes, its glowing eyes flashing with an unsettling intelligence. The air between them crackled with energy, a silent, ancient power that seemed to surge with every movement. Luna's heart raced as she watched the two giants battle. Bruce's strength was immense, but the creature seemed to be fueled by something darker, something unnatural. Luna knew she had to do something. She couldn't just stand there and watch. The forest, this living, breathing force, was pushing them to the brink, and Luna felt it deep in her bones. She was no longer just an observer in this fight, she was part of it now. Bruce stumbled as the creature's claws raked across his side, and Luna's stomach tightened. The bear's roars were filled with pain, but his resolve remained strong. He wasn't backing down, not without a fight. Luna's eyes flickered to the man, the one who had called the forest alive. He stood motionless, watching the battle unfold with that same unsettling smile on his face. His presence was like a cold shadow, suffocating and ominous. Luna's instincts screamed at her to confront him, to stop him from controlling the forest, but she knew she couldn't do it alone. Bruce was the only one who could stand against the creature, and she had to help him. The wind shifted, howling louder than ever before. It wasn't just the storm that raged, it was the forest itself, growing angry, waking up to claim what it believed was its own. Luna felt the power building, the very ground beneath her pulsing with dark energy. The trees bent closer, the air thick with a malevolent force. Everything was closing in on them. In a moment of clarity, Luna made a decision. She wasn't just a bystander anymore. She had to fight for herself, for Bruce, for the truth that Gregor had died trying to expose. She wasn't going to let the forest consume them both. She turned to the man, the one who had orchestrated this chaos, and narrowed her eyes. "What have you done to the village?" Luna demanded, her voice shaky but filled with resolve. "What is this? Why are you doing this?" The man's cold smile didn't falter. "The village has always been part of the forest's cycle," he said, his voice laced with a twisted sense of satisfaction. "They made their peace with the wilderness. But peace comes at a price. And the price is always paid in blood. Gregor was foolish enough to try to break the balance, and now, you will see what happens when the truth is revealed." Luna's breath caught in her throat. The forest wasn't just alive, it was a pact, a contract that the village had made long ago. And now, Luna understood the cost of that agreement. The people of the village had been feeding the forest, offering sacrifices to keep it at bay. And Gregor had broken that unspoken rule. "Why me?" Luna asked, her voice trembling with the weight of the revelation. "Why have you chosen me?" The man's gaze grew darker, his eyes narrowing. You are not just a cat, Luna. You are the bridge, the link between the wild and the domesticated. The forest sees you, knows you. And now, you are part of it. Before Luna could respond, Bruce roared again, his voice filled with pain and fury. The creature had struck a vicious blow, knocking him off balance, and it was moving in for the kill. Luna's heart raced, and without thinking, she dashed toward the battle, her small body moving faster than she thought possible. "Bruce!" Luna cried, her voice desperate. Bruce's eyes flickered toward her, his massive form weakened but still standing. His breath was ragged, his body covered in cuts and bruises from the creature's strikes. But his resolve remained unbroken. Luna's mind raced, searching for something, anything, that could turn the tide of the battle. The forest, the storm, everything around them felt alive with an energy that was suffocating, like it was pushing them both into submission. But Luna refused to give up. She had to do something, she had to stop this before it was too late. She glanced at the man, his expression still unreadable, and his eyes watching the fight like a puppet master pulling invisible strings. Luna's eyes locked with his, and something clicked inside her. She wasn't just a spectator in this game, she was a part of it. She had the power to change the course of this story. But she had to be brave enough to wield it. Luna took a deep breath, her body trembling with fear and determination. She didn't understand everything, but she understood one thing: if they were to survive, they had to confront the forest together. And to do that, Luna needed to fight, not with claws, not with teeth, but with something deeper, something that connected her to the world around her. She closed her eyes for a moment, focusing on the pulse of energy that flowed through the forest. She could feel it, the deep, rhythmic heartbeat of the earth beneath her paws, the energy that bound everything together. The trees, the snow, the animals, all of it was connected, and it was alive with power. And Luna realized something: she was part of that power. She had always been part of it. With a fierce determination, Luna turned to the storm, her voice rising in a defiant cry. "Stop!" she shouted, her voice cutting through the howling wind. "Stop, and listen to me." For a moment, everything went still. The wind, the trees, the storm, they all paused as Luna's words reverberated through the air. The energy in the forest shifted, the oppressive weight lifting just slightly. Bruce's growl softened, and the creature hesitated for the first time since the battle began. Luna stood tall, her small form defiant, her eyes filled with a strength she never knew she had. "This is not the way," she said, her voice steady and clear. "The village has paid enough. The sacrifices, no more. You will not have us." The trees creaked, and the wind whispered in response, but Luna stood firm. She could feel it now, the deep connection to the wilderness, to the world around her. It wasn't just fear she felt anymore. It was power. Power that ran through her, through Bruce, through the very earth beneath them. And with that, Luna knew what she had to do. The forest might be alive, but it didn't have to control them. It had chosen her, but now, she would choose to stand against it. The awakening of the wild. The silence that followed Luna's cry was almost unbearable. For a moment, it felt as though the entire forest was holding its breath, watching, waiting to see what would happen next. The wind had died down, the snow falling gently as if the storm itself was listening to Luna's words. Bruce stood motionless beside her, his massive frame still and alert. The creature, which had been relentless in its attacks, paused mid-strike, its glowing eyes narrowing in uncertainty. The ground around them trembled slightly, a subtle vibration that seemed to hum beneath Luna's paws. She felt the energy surge around her, the raw force of the forest's power that she now realized had been alive within her all along. The trees creaked and groaned, their branches shifting like restless limbs. Luna felt their eyes on her, the weight of their ancient presence pressing down on her shoulders. But she stood tall, her body small in comparison to the vast wilderness around her, yet her heart beat with a steady, unwavering courage. The man, the keeper of the forest, watched her with growing intensity, his cold smile fading into something darker, something far more menacing. "You cannot control this," he said, his voice barely more than a whisper, but it carried through the stillness of the air like a poison. "The forest will never bow to you." Luna didn't flinch. She could feel the truth in his words. This was no simple fight. The forest had been here long before the village, long before her. But it had always been misunderstood, its power feared and hidden away. And now, the forest was waking. It wasn't just the village it wanted everything. And Luna was the key. She took a step forward, her paws sinking slightly into the snow, but her gaze never wavered from the man. "Maybe I can't control it," she said, her voice steady, her resolve as firm as the ground beneath her. "But I can stand with it. I won't let you use the forest as a weapon anymore." A low rumble rose from the depths of the earth, and the air seemed to shimmer with energy. Bruce growled softly beside her, his body rippling with tension. Luna could feel the power swirling around them, the connection between them growing stronger with each passing second. The creature, which had paused in its attack, now stood frozen, its unnatural eyes fixed on Luna. It seemed to sense the change, the shift in the atmosphere, and for the first time, there was hesitation in its movements. It was a creature of the forest, yes, but it, too, was controlled by the ancient force that had awakened. Luna's heart pounded in her chest as she stared at the creature, her mind racing. She wasn't afraid anymore. The forest was not just a place of danger, it was a living, breathing entity that had always been a part of her, a part of them all. Bruce, the creature, the trees, the wind, they were all connected by this wild energy. It was in them. It was in her. "Bruce," Luna whispered, her eyes flicking to the bear beside her. "We need to work together. We can stop this." Bruce's growl softened, and he stepped forward, his body radiating strength and determination. He was no longer just a wild animal, he was her partner, her ally. The forest had chosen them both, and together, they would face whatever came. The man stepped back, his eyes widening as he realized the shift in the balance. "You think you've won?" he hissed, his voice trembling with anger. "You think the forest will choose you over its true master?" Luna's gaze hardened, her voice quiet but resolute. "I think the forest chooses what it believes is worthy. And it's not you." As the words left her mouth, Luna felt a surge of energy flow through her, an ancient power that coursed through the very veins of the earth. The trees groaned, and the wind picked up again, but this time, it wasn't just the storm. The air hummed with the force of the forest's will, and Luna could feel the shift in the energy. The forest was listening to her, responding to her. The man took another step back, his eyes flickering with a mixture of fear and disbelief. "You cannot stop what is already in motion," he warned, his voice growing more desperate. "The forest will reclaim what belongs to it." "No," Luna said, her voice clear and strong. "It's time for the forest to remember who it is. Not a place of fear. Not a place of sacrifice. A place of balance. A place of life." The earth rumbled beneath her paws, and for a moment, everything went still. The creature, the man, Bruce, everything held its breath, waiting for the next move. And then, the forest responded. The trees began to shift, their trunks creaking and groaning as though awakening from a long slumber. The wind picked up, swirling around them in a wild, untamed frenzy. The snow, which had been falling steadily before, now swirled in the air like a storm unleashed. The forest was alive, and it was no longer an entity controlled by the darkness. It was fighting back. Luna felt the energy surge through her, a connection to the very heartbeat of the forest. It was no longer something to fear, it was something to respect. And as the forest surged with life, the man's expression shifted from anger to fear. "No," he cried, his hands raised in a futile gesture. "This isn't how it was meant to be." Bruce let out a mighty roar, his deep voice reverberating through the clearing as the creature lunged toward him once more. But this time, the force of the forest was behind them. Bruce stood his ground, his claws striking the creature with newfound strength, and the creature, though powerful, faltered in the face of the awakening wilderness. Luna stepped back, her heart pounding in her chest. The forest was no longer a place of danger, it was a place of freedom. The balance had been restored, and she and Bruce were the ones to set it right. As the creature recoiled, the trees groaned once more, and the wind died down, leaving only the soft, steady hum of the forest in its wake. The man, now standing at the edge of the clearing, looked defeated. His eyes, once filled with a twisted hunger, were now empty, haunted. "You don't understand," he whispered, his voice barely audible. Luna took a step toward him, her eyes soft but filled with resolve. "I understand more than you think," she said. "The forest doesn't belong to anyone. It belongs to itself. And now, it's free." With that, the man turned and disappeared into the woods, vanishing as quickly as he had appeared, swallowed by the wilderness he had once tried to control. The return to balance. The forest, once dark and oppressive, had transformed before Luna's eyes. The air was clearer, the weight of the shadows lifting as though a veil had been torn away. The trees, now steady and still, stood tall like silent sentinels, no longer reaching out with sinister intent. The storm had subsided, leaving behind a quiet calm, as if the world itself had exhaled in relief. Luna stood at the center of the clearing, her heart still racing from the events that had just unfolded. Bruce was beside her, his massive frame still tense but calming, the wild energy of the battle now dissipating into the air. The bond between them had solidified in the heat of the moment, a bond that transcended their differences. A small domesticated cat and a wild bear, now partners in the great dance of the forest, a partnership that had, against all odds, restored balance to the wilderness. Luna turned to Bruce, her golden eyes filled with gratitude and understanding. "We did it," she said, her voice soft but firm. "The forest is free." Bruce's eyes flickered to her, and for a moment, it was as though the two of them shared an unspoken understanding. The battle wasn't just for the village or the people, it had been for the forest itself. And in doing so, they had become part of something much bigger than either of them could have imagined. The wind whispered through the trees, a gentle sigh that seemed to echo the peace that had settled over the land. The danger was over, and yet, Luna felt an odd sense of emptiness, as if the battle had left an indelible mark on her. It wasn't over, not truly. The forest had been freed, but the truth she had uncovered was far from complete. The village still held its secrets, its complicity in the ancient pact with the wilderness, and Luna knew that the journey wasn't finished. It couldn't be. With a deep breath, Luna looked toward the distant village, her gaze steady. "It's not over, is it?" she asked softly. Bruce's growl rumbled in response, but it wasn't one of aggression. It was an acknowledgement. They both knew that the village, the people who lived there, would have to face the truth. The forest had been freed, but it was up to the people to change. The pact, the sacrifices, the years of silence, those things could no longer remain in the dark. The village would have to reckon with its past, and Luna, along with Bruce, would be the ones to ensure that the truth came to light. The awakening of the village. The walk back to the village was quiet, the snow now a soft, silent blanket over the world. Luna felt a sense of finality in the air, but the tension hadn't fully lifted. There was still work to be done. As she and Bruce made their way through the forest, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was still lurking beneath the surface. The people of the village may have lived their lives in silence, but now they would have to confront what they had been hiding. The forest had been awakened, and its influence would no longer be ignored. When they reached the outskirts of the village, Luna paused. The houses, small and humble, lay nestled against the edge of the forest, the smoke from chimneys rising in thin spirals against the cold sky. It looked peaceful, serene even. But Luna knew better now. There was darkness in the village, a darkness that had been allowed to grow unchecked for too long. Bruce stopped beside her, his large body casting a shadow against the small cabin that sat at the village's edge, the very cabin where Luna had grown up, where she had lived in safety and comfort, ignorant of the world outside. "I have to face them," Luna whispered, more to herself than to Bruce. "I can't hide from this. The truth has to come out." Bruce's eyes softened as he turned toward her, his body low to the ground. He was here for her, he always had been, and Luna knew that this journey, this fight, wasn't hers alone. It was theirs. As she approached the village, the doors of the cabins creaked open one by one. The villagers stepped out, their faces a mixture of curiosity, fear, and confusion. They had felt the shift in the forest, the sudden calm after the storm, the silence that had replaced the tension. They had sensed something had changed, but they didn't know what. Luna's heart pounded as she approached the center of the village, where Matilda stood waiting. The elderly woman's eyes softened when they landed on Luna, but there was an edge of fear beneath her gaze. She had known, Luna realized. She had known the truth all along. "You've come back," Matilda said quietly, her voice trembling. "You've seen what's out there, haven't you?" Luna nodded, her throat tight. "I've seen everything, Matilda. The village's pact with the forest, the sacrifices made to keep the wilderness at bay. I've learned the truth." Matilda lowered her head, her eyes filled with sorrow. "I never wanted it to be like this," she whispered. "But we had no choice. The forest, it wanted more. It demands things we couldn't refuse." Luna's eyes hardened. "That's not an excuse. The truth is what matters now. The forest doesn't control us. We've been living in fear for too long." The villagers gathered around them, some hesitant, others with expressions of guilt and resignation. Luna could see it in their eyes, each of them had a part in the pact, whether they had known the full extent of it or not. They had chosen to ignore the darkness, to pretend that it didn't exist. But now, there was no hiding. "I won't let the forest take any more," Luna said, her voice strong and clear. "I won't let this be our fate. The sacrifices end here. We must face the truth and make things right." There was silence as the villagers exchanged uncertain glances. It was Matilda who finally spoke again, her voice quiet but steady. "We've lived in fear of the wilderness for so long, Luna. But maybe it's time to change. Maybe it's time to live with the forest, not against it." Luna nodded. "We can live with the forest, but we can't let it control us. We're part of this land, just as much as the trees and the animals. And we need to find a new balance, one that doesn't demand sacrifices, one that doesn't feed on fear." Matilda's face softened with a mixture of relief and sadness. "Then we must start over," she said, her voice filled with quiet determination. "We must rebuild. And we will. A new era." The days after the village's awakening passed with steady progress. What had once been a place cloaked in fear and ignorance was now filled with a quiet energy, a resolve to change, to live in balance with the land and the forest. Luna watched as the villagers slowly adapted to their new way of life. Their distrust of the wilderness began to fade, replaced by a deep respect for the land that they had once tried to control. They started planting crops with care, giving thanks to the earth for its bounty, and they even started learning the old ways, the forgotten rituals that honored the forest and its inhabitants. Luna's role in this transition was subtle, but vital. She was the bridge, the one who had understood both the village and the wilderness, and she helped the villagers find the balance they so desperately needed. Bruce stood as her constant ally, a symbol of the forest's power and protection. Together, they became living symbols of the unity between the village and the wild. The villagers had begun to see the forest differently. It was no longer just a dark, threatening place, but a living, breathing entity that deserved respect. They had been given a second chance, and they were determined to make the most of it. But despite all the progress, Luna knew there was still more to be done. The forest had been awakened, but so had the villagers. They had to continue their journey of learning, understanding, and healing. There was no quick fix, no easy way forward. It was a long road ahead, but Luna had no doubt they could do it. One evening, as the sun set behind the trees, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink, Luna found herself standing at the edge of the forest once more. Bruce stood beside her, his large form a comforting presence, his eyes scanning the woods as though he could sense every shift in the air. Luna breathed in deeply, feeling the cool wind against her fur. It was a peaceful moment, one she had come to treasure, but she knew that this was not the end of the journey. There were still deep mysteries in the forest, ancient secrets that remained buried. And she needed to understand them, not just for herself, but for the future of the village. "Bruce," Luna said softly, her eyes fixed on the darkening forest, "I think it's time we go further. There's so much more to the forest, and I have to know it all." Bruce let out a low rumble, and Luna felt his gaze on her. She could sense that he understood, that he, too, felt the pull of the wilderness. They had come a long way together, but their journey wasn't over. There were more mysteries to uncover, more lessons to learn. And the forest had chosen her to uncover them. Together, they ventured deeper into the woods, their path illuminated only by the soft glow of the fading sun. The trees towered above them, the forest alive with the sound of leaves rustling and branches creaking. The further they walked, the more Luna felt the ancient power of the land. It wasn't just the trees, or the animals, or even the earth beneath her paws. It was something else, something ancient, something that connected everything in the forest. As they walked, Luna felt herself growing more attuned to the land around her. She could hear the whispers of the trees, the sighs of the wind, and the soft murmurs of the creatures hidden in the shadows. It was as though the forest itself was speaking to her, guiding her, teaching her. Eventually, they arrived at a clearing, a place Luna had never seen before. It was quiet here, the air still and heavy with the weight of the past. In the center of the clearing stood an ancient stone, covered in moss and vines. It was weathered, worn by time, but it radiated an energy that was impossible to ignore. Luna approached the stone cautiously, her eyes scanning its surface. There were markings carved into the stone, symbols she didn't recognize. As she studied them, she felt the familiar pulse of energy run through her, a connection that seemed to reach deep into the earth, into the very heart of the forest. "This place," Luna whispered, her voice filled with awe. "It's ancient. It's part of the forest's heart." Bruce moved beside her, his large frame casting a shadow against the stone. He stood still, his eyes fixed on the markings, his low growl vibrating through the air. Luna placed a paw gently on the stone, and as she did, a wave of energy surged through her, a deep, primal connection that flooded her senses. She closed her eyes, letting the energy fill her, feeling the weight of the forest's history press against her mind. The markings on the stone began to glow, faintly at first, but then with increasing intensity. The voice of the forest, soft and distant, spoke again, this time not as a whisper, but as a call. It was the same voice Luna had felt in the oak, but this time, it was clearer, stronger. "You have come," the voice said. "The one who bridges the worlds. You have walked the path of the wild and the village. You have restored the balance. But now, the time has come to understand the true nature of the forest." Luna's heart raced as she listened to the words. She understood now, she wasn't just the bridge. She was the key to unlocking the deeper mysteries of the forest, to understanding its true nature. The forest had chosen her, and now she had to learn from it. She had to become part of it, not just as its guardian, but as its voice. "The village," Luna began, her voice filled with uncertainty. "What about the village? Can they live with the forest? Can we keep the balance?" The voice on the wind seemed to consider her question before answering. "The balance will remain, but it will not be easy. The village must learn to live with the wild, not as conquerors, but as caretakers. They must remember that the forest is not just a place. It is a living force that must be respected. And you, Luna, will guide them." Luna stood still, her heart heavy with the weight of the responsibility. She had already brought the village to this point, but now, she understood. The real work had just begun. The forest had chosen her to be its protector, its voice, its bridge. She could no longer be just a small cat in a cabin. She was a part of the wild now, a part of its soul. With a final glance at the stone, Luna turned to Bruce. He met her gaze with calm understanding, as though he, too, had always known this was her path. They would continue their journey together, learning, growing, and guiding the village to a new understanding of the wild. Luna took a deep breath and stepped forward, her paws light on the ground, her heart steady with resolve. "We'll make sure they understand," she said softly. "The forest, the village, they'll live in harmony, side by side." The final step. The village, once torn between fear and respect for the wilderness, had found its new rhythm, its new purpose. Under Luna's guidance, they were becoming stewards of the land, not its conquerors. With Bruce by her side, Luna had brought the villagers together, and they had learned to honor the forest, to walk in harmony with it, as they had once done long ago. But the journey was far from over. Now, as the seasons shifted and time moved forward, Luna knew the next step was to ensure that the lessons they had learned wouldn't fade with time. There would be no more sacrifices, no more fear of the wilderness, but true respect for its power, its wisdom, and its beauty. The bond between the village and the forest had been forged, but it needed to be protected, nurtured, and carried forward by those who would come after them. The forest had been freed, yes, but the village was still healing. The truth of the past could not be erased, but it could be acknowledged and used as a foundation to build something better. Luna had given the village a chance to change, to start anew. And now, she would be the one to show them how to keep that change alive. A day of remembrance. Luna called for a gathering, just as she had in the past, but this time, it was different. The villagers no longer feared the forest. They had become part of it, walking alongside it, listening to its whispers, learning its secrets. Together, they had learned the importance of balance. Now, Luna's task was to ensure that they never forgot the lessons they had learned. Under the wide, open sky, the villagers gathered in the village square. The air was crisp with the coming of autumn, the trees around them painted in rich hues of red, orange, and gold. A light breeze carried the earthy scent of fallen leaves and pine needles. Luna stood before them, her golden eyes shining with quiet pride. "Today is a day of remembrance," Luna said, her voice steady and clear, though her heart swelled with emotion. "Today, we honor the forest, the land that has provided for us, the land that we have learned to respect. It is a day to reflect on the past, to understand the mistakes we have made, but also to look forward to the future we will build together. The forest has taught us that we are all connected, and that we must care for what sustains us." Matilda, standing by Luna's side, nodded in agreement. "We have come far, but we must not forget the lessons of the past. The forest will always be here, and we must remember our place within it. We are its stewards, and it is our responsibility to keep the balance." Luna turned to the villagers, her eyes meeting each of theirs, seeing the hope and commitment in their faces. "The forest is not just a place of danger or mystery," she continued. "It is a living part of the world we share. And now, it is our duty to protect it, just as it has protected us. We must ensure that our children, and their children, understand the importance of living in balance with the land. For if we fail to honor that balance, we risk losing everything." The villagers stood silent, taking in her words. Luna felt a sense of peace wash over her, knowing that the future of the village and the forest was no longer uncertain. They had found their way, together, and they would continue to walk it with respect, love, and understanding. A legacy of harmony. As the ceremony ended, Luna felt a deep sense of fulfillment. The villagers had made a promise that day, a promise to live in harmony with the land, to protect the wilderness, and to ensure that the mistakes of the past were never repeated. They would pass on the knowledge of the forest to future generations, teaching them the importance of respect, of stewardship, and of balance. Luna, once the small, domesticated cat with little understanding of the wild, had become a symbol of change. She had walked the path of the forest, faced its darkness, and emerged stronger, wiser. With Bruce by her side, she had not only restored balance to the forest, but she had also given the village a new beginning, a chance to live in harmony with the world around them. As the days passed and the village continued to grow, Luna found herself walking the woods more often, not just as its guardian, but as its friend. The trees no longer whispered warnings, but greetings. The animals no longer viewed her with suspicion, but with trust. She was part of the forest now, as much as it was part of her. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the world in soft, golden light, Luna stood at the edge of the forest, Bruce beside her. The village was peaceful in the distance, the smoke from chimneys rising into the sky, and the sound of laughter and music carried on the wind. The balance was finally restored. "We've done it, haven't we?" Luna said softly, her voice filled with quiet satisfaction. Bruce's deep, rumbling growl was the only answer she needed. His presence beside her was all the confirmation she required. Together, they had changed the course of the village, the forest, and the world around them. The wilderness was no longer a place of fear. It was a place of understanding, of coexistence, and of life. And as Luna stood there, watching the peaceful scene unfold, she knew that the future was brighter than it had ever been before. The forest would thrive, the village would grow, and together, they would continue to walk the path of harmony. Thank you so much for joining us on this incredible journey with Luna and Bruce in Guardians of the Forest. We hope you were as captivated by their story of redemption, friendship, and the power of balance as we were. Luna's journey has shown us that no matter how small we are, we can always make a big difference in the world around us, especially when we stand together. If you enjoyed the story, don't forget to like this video, share it with your friends, and subscribe to our channel for more heartwarming and mysterious tales. And, of course, hit the notification bell so you never miss an adventure. We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. What did you think of Luna and Bruce's journey? How do you think the village will continue to live in harmony with the forest? Until next time, remember, the greatest stories often start when we least expect them. Stay curious, stay kind, and we'll see you in the next adventure.